up the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always...
Morning, everybody. I don't even know what the hell to talk about today. I had such a bad time working on the black Jeep. Which, it ain't got no shocks on it. It needs more front lift. That's why I'm back in Jangalang. Jangalang has no bass in it. I start pulling stuff out of the back to... I got to pull the subs, get in there, try to pop the ports, break them apart where I glued them together, to put my speaker terminal studs out the sides rather than the back. And I got to pull these subs to swap to dual 2. So, yeah, I have a long list of things I need to be working on. And it all comes down to ohm load. That's what we can discuss. I keep seeing a lot of people in this group, Bass Hedge Free for All. If you're not in it, do a Google search, not a Google, a Facebook search for it. It's really, the group's taken off. It's got over 70,000 members. But we get a lot of noobs in there that don't like bass heads on a budget. And we get one reoccurring question, you know, I have a 300 watt kicker, or I have 2 of them. Can I put a 1,000 watt amp on them? Something like that, you know, because obviously they're reading 300 times 2, 600. They're really thinking that a 1,000 watt amp would be way too much. Now, kind of goes to what I got going on here. Not really, but kind of, because I got 615s in here. They're dual 4s. Each one's wired at 2 ohm. And if you know your math, if you take 2 ohms and divide it by 3, you get like 0.666666666. I don't know how many. There's a bunch of 6s. Now, that's my final ohm load per side for 3 subs. To do this properly, I have a couple options. 2 of them, not so great, but my options are to strap a pair of amps to them 3, which is what I do. So when we're going to round up to 0.67, but when you take 0.67 divided by 2, you wind up with 0.333, with each amp was seeing 0.33. Some people tried to bash because they're like, oh, well, them DS18 amps keep blowing. Yeah. It's a 1 ohm amp, guys. Yeah. They honestly really didn't like that 0.33. I mean, they played music. I demoed at Ruckus all day Saturday before one blew. But they wasn't real fond of that 0.33. And, you know, I wired 3 amps to the 615s where I came down to 1 ohm. And being at 1 ohm per amplifier, one, I got way more than rated power out of these amps. I was so proud. At one time I broke 8K at 2 ohm, but what I learned from that is I never rose to 3 ohms. Doing burps, and you know, I was burping from 20 hertz to like 45. That is, I don't play that high anyway. I try to play, you know, like 35 and under all the time. But the point is, I never rose to 3 ohms. So, well, you take that into consideration. I'm wired at 0.33. I wasn't rising to 1 ohm the majority of the time. Now, where this has to do with like how many watts or what size amp can you put on your subwoofers, it very well fits into it. Different enclosures obviously are going to have different amounts of rise. An impedance rise is the ohm load that you go to when you play music or a burp, or when the sub's moving, you're creating impedance rise. We'll put it that way. Now, if you're, let's say a sub, it can only handle 300 watts max. If you put a 1,000 watt amp on 2 of them and you're playing music, you're probably never gonna see, or it's gonna be hard to see 300 watts per sub anyway, just because of the rise thrown in the picture. Now, you could have an enclosure, and sometimes it happens like this. I didn't plan it. It just happen to not have a ton of rise, and depending upon the amp you buy, it could be grossly underrated, then you might be doing too much, you know. But there's a 90% chance that you're going to be just fine. And most subwoofers can take way more than rated power for a decent period of time anyway. I mean, I think these are like 1,100, 1,200 watts rated. And I get people message me all the time like, I would love to buy the Genesis, but it's only a 1,200 watt subwoofer. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I ran these things for a while with an 8K on each. And after clamping, you've seen what kind of power I get out of them 8K. So these amps, or these subs on average, saw around 5K each. So pretty solid, you know. Now, when I was wired at 1 ohm per amp, and when I wired on 3 to do tests, and each amp was at 1 ohm, and you know, I got over 11K at one point out of 1 amp. But at the end of that video, you guys that watched it, you'll see that I did a music run just like I would be given a demo, where I played about 45 seconds to a minute of music. I had the wife back there filming the AMM1 in real-time power, and there was like one point I think I broke 4K, because when you're playing music, your impedance it's so high. There's a few little places where it dip down a little bit, but it generally stays really high. And it was crazy, you know, going from constantly being over 7K each burp I did to being all the way down at like 3K and under majority of the time playing music. So that'll kind of give you a ballpark idea of what's going on and how to choose an amp wisely. My theory is always choose double the amp you need. And going back to, you know, like, so I'm using that as a reference because somebody did ask that. A 3K amp or a 300 watt subwoofer. My bad. Anyway, a 300 watt subwoofer. You had 2 of them. You know, that's 600 watts. 1,200 watt amp. It'll easily 1,200 watt amp. I would go ahead and round it up to a 1,500 watt if it was me personally, but that's just how I like to do things. Like the Wilds, the Audio Ace Wilds that I got for the Black Jeep build. I'm gonna have 312s, and I don't even know what they're rated for. Maybe 1,000 watt subwoofer. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't even really look at the specs on them yet. But I'm gonna say they're probably around a 900 to 1,000 watt subwoofer. I'm not 100% on that. Don't hold me to it. But anyway, I'm gonna run 2 5Ks on them. 312s, you know, which would normally be 3,000 watts. I'm gonna run 2 5Ks, 10,000 watt. Just because when you set clean and you play impedance rise into the whole picture, are they gonna eat that power all day? All day. You know, I'm grown enough and mature enough to be like, yeah, they hot, they getting a little stinky. We need to take a break, you know. I know how to do that. It's no big deal. Really, it ain't like the power is just gonna go into the voice coil when you put too much in it and explode it. You're dealing with heat, guys. That's your whole factor of what happens to a subwoofer is when you overpower and it can't properly cool, or you play a lot of, you clip it where you got a lot of distortion going into it, a squared off wave, that builds heat really, really, really quick. And it all comes down to a cooling issue. That's why subwoofers have holes, like a big hole in the center. That's for that dust cap. When the sub moves forward, it'll create a vacuum and pull air in. And then when it comes back, it pushes the air out. It's like a push-pull cooling. And then you run into, you know, some subwoofers around that big hole in the middle. They got little holes around there. That's just extra cooling. And you need that. But Even like the top plate a lot of times is milled out and vented. It all comes down to cooling. And when a subwoofer blows, what has happened is you've overheated it so many times. The glue on the coil, because if you look at your coil, it's got wire wrapped around it. That glue gets disintegrated just from being heat cycled so many times. And you'll build up so much heat that the insulation on them wires, which they do have a really thin, like, it ain't varnish, like epoxy insulation, it'll all disintegrate in the coil wires that just kind of touch and short out. And that's where you get your spark show from. Or it can happen really, really rapidly. Like full bridge amplifiers, they do like brutal things to coils when they go. They'll usually, like, it'll get so much badness or insulation loss at one point that a bunch of the stuff will just kind of like go and it'll blow a hole in it. But it all goes back to heat, guys. That's essentially what causes all the problems with a subwoofer, is just heat. Now, there are instances where it was put together wrong, improperly shimmed, and rather than the coil being like straight on the center pole, it could be a little crooked, or it could have got reconed badly, and that'll cause one side to like rub on the motor in there, and it'll rub all the way through the insulation and short out, creating a dead short. There's a lot of scenarios that can happen, or it can bottom out, and when it bottoms out, that just wrinkles the former and everything that the coil was on, and it creates a short out and blows. But the most of the time, if you can smell your subwoofers, it's heat. With me, when you get a new build, I notice it takes a while for that new epoxy that's getting heat cycled to quit gassing off, which is what you're smelling. And then you'll go into a stage where you don't smell them no more near as bad. They're usually good at that point, and then if you start smelling them a lot, yeah, they're about to blow. Well, they're just hot. And a good thing to do at that point is not full tilt, but play some like lows at like half knob, just to bring air in and out real good to cool them off. But yeah, always go double rated power on your subwoofers. And learn about impedance. A lot of people just don't understand this, you know. I have people look at me weird when I tell them I'm going to put 2 amps on 3 subs. And they're like, how? I'm going to put 3 coils on this one, 3 coils on this one. They're 2 ohm amps. Each one's going to be at 1.33. Yes, I always go below rated impedance. I can't even speak English today. But that's what happens, yeah. 3 coils, and it's pretty common to do that. Take 1 coil from each sub, burn it to this, that. Make sure the amps are really well gain matched. You want to gain match as close as possible. Let it eat. How's that Jeep gonna do? I don't know. I'm suffering putting a lift on the thing. It's gonna be a long build, because coming up really shortly, I need to jump on doing the wife's doors and the Blazer, so that thing is back up, running, and good to go. She misses driving it. I still have 4 wheels for it in the tattoo booth at the shop that I need to get out of there. The boss lady has mentioned it to me on all these days I've had off that I need to get them wheels out of there. Yeah, I got a lot going on, guys. And for those of you that are on Patreon, you already know what I got. And for those of you that are YouTube members here, I don't do enough for you guys. I'm going to try to start doing more. I still have names to add to the back of the enclosure, but I gave you a sneak peek of what's coming for this blue Jeep. That's right, I got something for the blue Jeep. My YouTube members and Patreon, you know, I put up a little sneak peek for them guys. They seen it first. I don't even know when I'm going to do the video about what I got. I might do it this weekend, or I might not. It just depends. I have a lot of stuff going on. Don't know what order I want to put things in. But thank y'all for watching. Peace out, guys. And as always, bass on.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no man.